Today is the 26th of November, which of course means we have some fresh deals in the Steam Autumn Sale 2016. And yet again is another strong day. I have to say, overall, this Steam sale has actually been pretty good, with not too many repeats and some decent offerings on some pretty good titles. Now this time we only have a couple of franchises to kick things off, so let's begin with the Fallout franchise. To kick things off, of course, we have Fallout 4, and it is crazy cheap. If you are at all tempted to get into this game, I don't think you're going to see a much better deal than this for quite some time. It is 67% off, making it £13.19, which is a crazy cheap price for that game. The Season Pass is also reduced 40%, making it £23.99, so if you already have the base game, then perhaps that might be worth considering. Fallout New Vegas Ultimate Edition is 50% off, making it £7.49, and Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition is also £7.49. I have to say the deal on those two isn't too great. I mean, it sounds good in theory, but I've seen both of those for way cheaper than that. So if you want to get the absolute best deal, I'd say wait for Christmas on those two, as they probably will be included. But of course, if you're desperate to play it now, I'd say Fallout Vegas is the one out of those two. Not that Fallout 3 is bad, I just prefer New Vegas out of those two. We have the Fallout Classic Collection, which is Fallout and Fallout 2 and Fallout Tactics at 67% off, which is £4.61. And we also have them all individually priced at 67% off at £2.63 for Brotherhood of Steel, Fallout 2 and Fallout. The next franchise on the chopping board is Bioshock. A pretty decent price here for Bioshock Infinite at 50% off, making it £9.99. Not too bad a deal, but again, if you want to get the absolute cheapest price, it probably will go cheaper than that at some point, but it's still not a bad reduction on a very, very good game indeed. Now, of course, we also have reductions for Bioshock and Bioshock 2. Bioshock is 50% off, making it £6.99, and that is for the remastered version. But of course, it does come with the original as well, if you would prefer the original. And we also have Bioshock the Collection, which is Bioshock Remastered, Bioshock 2 Remastered, and a bunch of DLC, as well as Bioshock Infinite and some DLC. Now that pack is 30% off, making it £27.99. So you get all the Bioshock all the time for a pretty decent price. As for Bioshock 2 by itself, however, it is of course the remastered version for 50% off, making it £6.99. Now I'd say pretty much everyone watching this has played Bioshock at some point, but I would still say Bioshock Infinite, not bad price, and Bioshock, that is definitely worth that price, absolutely. So let's continue, shall we, with Mad Max. This particular sandbox game came out to mixed reviews, and to be honest, I think it was kind of punished unfairly by some. From what I've played of it, which is actually a fair chunk, it's actually a really good game. It is very thematically appropriate for the Mad Max universe. The world looks exactly as you'd expect, the characters are about as you'd expect, and you got all the driving around and souping up your car and doing all the post-apocalyptic madness that you'd expect of a Mad Max game. It is actually really fun. Now, the worst part of the game, I would say, is the fairly generic Arkham-style combat. And that's probably got a sigh from many of you, as that seems to be the default for many games these days when they don't really know what combat to go for. It's like, oh, we'll just go Arkham style. Now, it's not bad or anything, it's perfectly fine, it's just not very, what's the word? Just not very refreshing. It's nothing new. It's something, it's well executed, but you've seen it so many times at this point, and it doesn't bring anything new to the table that we haven't already seen in Arkham and other such games. However, Mad Max, despite that, is still definitely a sandbox worth your time. It is an interesting world. It is a gameplay that is satisfying. So I'd definitely give this one a bash, especially at this fairly decent price. It is 40% off, making it £14.99. However, the game is only £25 full price, so do keep that in mind. You might see this go cheaper at Christmas, but get a real reduction. It's probably going to be next year sometime. But I would say that game is definitely worth that price tag. Now, next up, we had a massive RPG for the chopping table in the form of Divinity Original Sin. Now, this is the enhanced edition. Before I go any further, this is the base game, but of course, loads of enhancement, full voiceovers, game modes, full controlled sport split screen co-op, new content, a new ending, new weapons, puzzles, enemies, better loot, all of the stuff, plus loads of improvements from the guys over at Larian Studios. So if you're after an old school sort of action RPG, Divinity Original Sin is definitely worth your time. It is overwhelmingly positively reviewed recently and very positively overall, and rightfully so, as Larian did an absolute fantastic job. Now, this is 50% off, making it £14.99, and with a massive RPG like this, you're definitely going to be getting your money's worth. However, there is the Collector's Edition, which has 2 copies of Enhanced Edition. As I said, it does have local co-op, and both Divine Divinity and Beyond Divinity, as well as some design documents, the art pack, and the soundtrack. That is 50% off, making it £26.49. Now, it also has multiplayer as well, which again is probably why you're getting the 2 copies in that pack there. So perhaps you and a friend wanted to give it a bash, then that is definitely worth the price, because split between the 2 of you, that's actually pretty decent. I would say this game is definitely worth your time. Now, next up is a game that's been on sale approximately 1 billion times, and it is none other than Left 4 Dead 2. I don't think I really need to describe what this game is. This game comes on sale every single time. It is the co-op zombie game, and it is 80% off, making it £2.99. You also have the Valve Complete Bundle, which has 19 items for 88% off, making it £18.43. And you can also grab yourself Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 for 85% off, making it £4.48. Moving on from high-octane zombie shooting action to something much more calm and chill in the form of Farming Simulator 2017. I would say for many this falls firmly in the dad game category, where you just sit back, you put on a podcast or your favourite chill out music, and you just drive around a farm in a tractor or a combine harvester or whatever, and you do your farm, you run your farm, you chill, you relax, everything's calm, everything's good. Now, the reduction on this particular entry into this series is not that great. It's 15% off, making it £25.49. So, not terribly amazing reduction. But looking at the reviews, it seems this is an improvement over Farming Simulator 2016. However, not to say it's a bad game or anything, I'm just saying the fans seem to think that this has a bunch more content. So if you're into this series, it's not a bad reduction, but again, if you're looking to save some real cash, you're not going to get it this time, I'm afraid. Let's move on from that chill experience to one that starts out chill but rapidly escalates in the form of Firewatch. Now, this game is what you would call a quote-unquote walking simulator, but I would say that this is one of the most well-executed games in that genre. And there is gameplay, there is exploration, there is sort of basic puzzles. There's not really the right word to say puzzles, but you kind of have to look around the environment to figure out what happened in certain places, that sort of thing. But this game is a mystery game. It is all about your character and what's happening to your character and the interaction that you have with a woman over the radio. You never really see any other human characters apart from far away, and you don't really interact with them all that much. The main person you speak to is this woman over the radio, and you're getting to know her, and she's getting to know you, and there's a relationship forming, and you obviously make choices in the conversations, which very much defines your relationship, and you kind of deal with like what it's like to be alone in the woods, because you're in the woods to watch for fires. It kind of gives the title away. You're here escaping from your problems, and you kind of deal with the paranoia of being alone in the woods and this mystery developing. It is a really well fleshed out story, and this is a prime example of excellent voice acting bringing characters to life. This game would not be the same without the wonderful voice acting. Now, this is 40% off, making it £8.99. I would definitely recommend it for that price. However, as I said, it is a quote-unquote walking simulator, so do keep that in mind. If you're not really into those games, probably best to avoid, but I would say this one is definitely worth a look-see. Next up on our list is Stellaris. This is a game I haven't actually played because, well, I don't have the time for grand strategy, unfortunately. It is a grand strategy game from Paradox, best known for Crusader Kings and Europa Universalis, and they've got this game which is a space exploration game, which is all about the strategy. You take over planets, you do your colony, all that sort of stuff. So if you're into that sort of thing, I would say check out some gameplay. It is very positively reviewed. It does look very cool. I think I would very much like this game, but Grand Strategy is basically a life leech. I unfortunately don't have the time to delve into it, but it does look very, very good indeed. A fairly decent reduction here. At 33% off, we have the base game at £23.44, we have the Nova edition at £28.13, or the Galaxy edition at £35.50, and we have various pieces of DLC. However, only one of the DLCs is actually reduced, the Plantoid Species Pack, at 33% off, making it £3.74. As I said, the community seems to recommend this one, but give the gameplay a whirl. But if you're into Grand Strategy and you're after some space good times, this is probably worth your time. And from the vast reaches of space to the grim reality of war, we have This War of Mine. Now, I actually really like this game because it's grim as hell. But that's pretty much what you want. It's a game about war. You do not play as some badass elite soldier or someone who had never held a gun in their life but still somehow manages to be a badass and knows how to handle an assault rifle without it dislocating his shoulder. No, you play as a group of civilians trying to survive a besieged city. You struggle with food, medicine, and constant danger from people trying to raid your camp and obviously take what you have for their own. You've got to deal with the well-being of your survivors, go out and find supplies like medicine and food and so on. It is a pretty grim look at the reality of war for people who aren't actually involved in the combat of it. So while this is not going to be what I would describe as a very particularly fun time in terms of the grimness of the game, it is still very well executed. It is an enjoyable experience in terms of like the mechanics are good, the gameplay is good, it does what it sets out to do, but it's not fun in the same way that Spec Ops The Line is not fun, if you catch my meaning. It is definitely worth a whirl. It is overwhelmingly positively reviewed and for good reason. If you're after a different perspective on war, some would argue more relatable perspective on war, This War of Mine is definitely what you're after. It's basically free. It's 80% off, making it £2.99. And the Little Ones DLC is also 50% off, making it £3.49, reduced from £6.99. So if you already have the base game, perhaps now's the time to pick up the DLC. However, from there we're going back up into space with Osiris New Dawn. Now, just FYI, this game is in early access, which basically means I haven't played it because I don't play early access games most of the time unless I get a key from the developer or whatever. However, this is a game set in space, rather. However, you are building a colony with your friends, you're battling people, you're prospecting for riches, you're discovering new things, you're taming indigenous wildlife, you're searching for lost expedition, you're trying to survive in the outreaches of space. Now, while this game is in early access, it is mostly positively reviewed. Obviously, given that it is a work in progress, do keep that in mind, that there might be some placeholder items, there might be some things that aren't completely polished. However, the graphics, judging from the screenshots and the trailers, which again are not always 100% representative, but still they look pretty good, are very pretty indeed. And of course, if the base game that's here is promising, then the full game, when it's finally released, whenever that is, will probably be satisfying as well. So if you're after a build a colony with your friends game that you're hoping No Man's Sky would possibly be, this might be worth a check out. I'd say check out some gameplay and reviews. Again, I haven't played this one because I don't play early access games, generally speaking, so do check it out. It does look promising, I must say. I might check this one out when it's actually out properly, because it looks like it has a ton of potential. Next up is a game that I also haven't played, but I've actually had my eye on for quite some time, and it is none other than The Forest. Now, this is another early access game, so do keep that in mind, but this is basically a survival game where you have to survive against some cannibals where you are, and you've got to build, explore, and you've got to survive. It is described as a survival horror simulator. So while it is a survival game, it's that survival term in the survival horror type of thing. You've got to outrun these cannibals, you've got to make things out of basic resources, you've got to make sure you've got a safe place to sleep at night, you've got to fight back against these people who are trying to eat you, all this sort of stuff. It sounds interesting because the idea of a survival game that actually has horror elements actually sounds really, really cool. But again, it's still in early access, and I don't generally play Alexis games, but I might have to break my rule for this one, because each time it comes on sale, it tempts me every time, and every time it looks cool. So it's 25% off at £8.24. So if you, like me, are tempted to buy this game, it's not too big an ask, but it's a pretty cheap game to begin with. It's only £11, so it's not a huge reduction on the base price, but it still makes it that just a little bit cheaper, you know? It does seem to be reviewed quite well, so maybe we can take the plunge together. So we have one last main page game before we actually get onto the rest of the games that I want to go through very quickly. And we have Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 1. Could you tell from that name that it's a JRPG? Because I sure could. So it is a turn-based RPG game, but apparently it's action. It's described as fast-paced, and apparently it breaks the fourth wall on regular occasions. It demolishes frequent tropes, and it has costume customization as well as item and weapon customization, and it has pretty cutesy anime style graphics, which may or may not put you off. But if you're after a JRPG experience, then it looks interesting at least. It is overwhelmingly positively reviewed, and it's not that expensive. It's 75% off. It is £5.74. So it does look like it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek with the sort of anime, very girly way it's presented. And again, it does break various tropes and all that good stuff. So if you're a long-standing fan of the franchise, perhaps you'll find a few laughs here. Again, as you can probably tell from my phrasing and my tone, haven't played this game myself, but it does look like it'll at least be interesting, to say the least. So that's it for the main page games. We have a few other highlighted deals I just want to very quickly go through. I won't be going through any descriptions, just the pricing as normal. We have Portal 2, $2.99, Battlefleet Gothic Armada, $14.99, Bastion, £2.74, Dirt franchise up to 90% off, Titan Quest is $4.49, Tales of Zestria is $13.59, The Long Dark is £7.49, Master of Orion is £13.79, Saints Row franchise is 75% off, I Am Setsuna is £20.09, Terraria is £5.24, and American Truck Simulator is £10.49. So what would I recommend the most out of today's deals? Well, it's a tough one, to be honest. It's probably between Firewatch, Bioshock Infinite, and This War of Mine out of those. Well, they're all very different, so take your pick. A very good day for Steam sales indeed. Thank you very much for watching, as always, guys. I'll see you next time.